Hey, hello everyone. Very good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Based on your time zone, wherever you are located and you are part of the world. So, yeah, before we get started, any questions, if you have any doubt, please feel free to put into the chat. And we have also added all the details as part of pinned comment. So, you can just get the details that you need, like the flow tracker and the other information that we have. Hey, hi, Sridhar. Hello. Everyone, good evening, good morning. Do you have any questions? Please put into the chat and then we'll get started in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for more attendees to start with. So, for can I get your excitement, or if you have a questions, if you are learning something, you're finding it useful, how you're finding this boot camp so far? Is this useful? This valuable for all of you, or how it is? Hey, good morning, Vijay. Yeah, hey Shrider, I'm good. Thanks for asking. Hope all is good with you as well. Okay, I have there is a question from a Raman. Uh, I have a question from yesterday's session in real time. What we most prefer to create the fields in screen flow, or we create the record fields? So it actually depends, Raman, as I said, but I usually prefer to basically use the record fields. That's my preference. If I have to create, like if I have to create a screen that is only taking the input for a single object, I'll always use screen flow for with the help of record fields. But let's say you have multiple objects. For example, you're taking the input for creating the contacts as well as account in the same screen, like you don't have separate screens for account and for contact. Then I would prefer to go with the having the different record, like not having a recorded inputs. Then I will prefer to have a record field for account and a record field for contact, and then have those. So always try to figure it out. If you could use record fields, that would be really helpful for you instead of typing it, because you have seen, right, we don't really need to provide anything in the create records element. We just put the record, the variable that we have, and tada, everything is done. To get the record id, get that record id from that variable itself. Nothing has to done. So that is something that I would recommend to go with that. And there is nothing as such. You will see most like both kind of videos there. Videos in the sense, not videos actually, the flows in your real time in your company, in your organization, where you will find that some of the flow are using record variables, some of them are using the direct input. So there is nothing as such that you really need to care about. Recommendation, if you want the best practice, if you want, I will always recommend to use record, because that is really super easy for us. It enhance our productivity. So that is the answer to your question. I hope this is good, you are able to get something. Any other questions, if anyone have, please feel free to put into. And maybe if you have some friends, your colleagues, you can share the links and they can join if they are available. I know this is Sunday, so most probably people might get busy. So if we don't have a question, let's start with the agenda. What we are going to talk today is, we are going to talk two things. As you might see the title of a video, subflow and auto launched flow. Okay, so we will first focus on what is subflow, and then we will move towards the auto launch flow. These are really the important concept, both the subflow and auto launch flow. These will basically be helpful for you to develop a complex flow, and that too in a very easy manner. Okay, so let's talk about subflow. As its name indicates, it is a subflow. It is a part of a flow, a complex flow. If you're developing a huge big flow, you will have a subflow, and you can use how. So a subflow is a auto-launch flow. It is a type of auto-launch flow that can be invoked from the parent flow. A subflow can also have a starting point, and parent flow can also have a starting point. And a screen flow that is calling another flow is known as the parent flow. With the help of subflow, we can divide our complex logic, our complex flows, into the multiple small flows so that it is easy for us to maintain and manage and debug the flow easily. If we talk about the benefit of using the subflow, that is same. You will be able to divide your complex flows into a small flow. You will be able to easily manage those flow. You will be able to easily debug those flow if there are any issues. If we talk about the use cases, there are multiple use cases, but some of the use cases I have put here in the screen itself. If you see, for example, the first one is again a very small generic example that I have taken. You have existing flows that are creating the account, contact, and opportunity, and these are the separate flows. There is no relation between these automations. Okay, you have three different screen flows responsible for creating account, contact, and opportunity. Now there is a requirement that you have to enhance your flow in such a way that from the same screen, from the same flow, you are taking the input for account, then for contact, and then for opportunity. And once you take the input, the respective records are getting created, and you are relating those contact, like contacts are getting related with account, and opportunities are also getting related with account. So in that case, you need to keep the existing functionality intact, that is not impacted by your new automation, and you also need to work with your new automation as well. So here you will have three separate flows that are already there, and then you will have one extra flow that will utilize these separate flows as a subflow. How? We will see how you could use a subflow, how you could send, like, pass the input from the parent to child, how you could get the output from the child to parent. Everything we are going to see. Then you have multiple processes that requires a task to be assigned to the running user, and email send the email to the customer. Now what exactly the second point talks about? Let's say that you have multiple flows, and at certain conditions, what you need is you need to basically create a task and assign it to the running user, means the user who is logged in, and then send the email to the customer. For example, your case is closed, you wanted to send the email to customer, or you are trying to create an account record or contact record. There is an error, so from the fault path, you are calling a subflow or an auto launch flow that is creating a task record, sending the email to customer support or to the dedicated email. That is again a that is where you could also use. The third point is again talking about same. If you have a failure step, right, that we have got, you need to send the email, you need to create a task, you need to log that in a custom object. This is again a kind of common steps that we do for any apex classes, triggers, batch apex, lwc. So if you have some certain common utilities that you want to utilize for multiple flows, then you will use subflow. So subflows, if I talk about overall, subflows is something that actually is a utility for you, where you could put your reusable code. Like in apex class, what we do is we create a utility class, create multiple methods, and then utilize inside another classes, right? Similarly here, subflows are basically the utility flows where you put your reusable logic and utilize in the different flows. Okay, you will be able to learn and relate more with the example that we are going to take here. So this is the scenario number 4 that we are going to do. And before we do with that, we have got a question. Only auto launched flows can be called as subflow. So we know we will come back to the auto launch flow, but to answer your question, auto launch flows and subflows are two different things. Okay, subflows can also be act as a parent flow. That means they can separately execute, they can run separately without the depending on the parent flow. But auto launch flows are those flows which actually requires some other process to call them. Either it could be your flow, it could be your process builder. Those are process builder is deprecated now. It could be your Apex class. It could be your VF page. So they will have a dependency on another process. But subflow, they may or may not have a dependency. They can run independently and they can also be used as part of your, we could say, different process, different flow. Okay. So your screen flow can itself act as a subflow. Okay. Where you create, we will see. Let's talk about this scenario and you will get to know. So this is the scenario. So in the previous session, we have got a scenario number 3 where we are creating a contact record. We are creating a case record from the same flow with the two separate screens. Okay. And then what we used to do is we used to display the error. If there is any error occurs, we used to display the error using the fault message. That's what we do, right? Now what we are going to do is we are going to enhance this functionality. First, we will perform the same thing with the help of the same flow, okay, in the same flow that we have developed previously. And next thing, we are going to enhance that with the help of subflow so that you get to know the clear utilization and the benefit of using subflow. So what we have to do is we have to display the error message. We also need to create a task record and assign to the current user, to the logged in user. And next thing that we need to do is we need to send the email to the support email. Okay. What we have to do is we have to send an email to a dedicated email provided to us. And what we need to send in the email is flow name, component, the component that has threw the error, and the error message. Okay. What error actually has came. These are the things that we are going to do as part of our scenario number 4. Now this is the, again, the pictorial representation that we have. We are going to start. Then we are going to select the information. We are going to show the screen for creating the contact record. And then if the contact record is successfully created, we are going to showcase the screen to take the input for the case record. If the case record is created, we will show the success screen. Okay. Now this was a happy path without any error. Now where could error occur? There are two places. One, while we are creating the contact record. Second, while we are creating the case record. So if contact record creation was unsuccessful, we are going to call the subflow to display the error, create a task and send the email. Similarly, if the case record was unsuccessful, we are again going to use the same subflow for displaying the error, creating a task and sending the email. Now, if you see here, we have two separate places where we actually need to do the same thing. We need to repeat the same process, right? Display the error, create a task and send the email. This is what we have to do. Now, let's quickly get back to Salesforce and then utilize this subflow, learn the concept, see in the practical implementation. So this was our flow that we have developed in the previous video. So let's open this flow, and as we talked about, every time you activate your flow, you want to modify it, you have to create a new version and then you have to work upon that. So let's do the save as, and we are going to create a new version and save it. Let's click on that little toolbar icon so that we can get all the resources, screens, formulas that we have on our left side. Now, if you notice, the create contact record that does not have any fault path. Okay. The create case record does have, but it does displays the error, the screen in the error, right? The error in the screen. So to add a fault path to the data element, to the create record element, we need to click on that element and select add fault path. You already know that. And you see here the fault path has been added. Now here what we have to do is we have to display the error, we have to create the task, and we have to send the email. So we are going to change the order. We will create a task, we will send the email, and then we will display the error, so that the background task, the background processes can be executed, and then a screen comes into the picture. So for creating a task, click on plus and then search for create record, as you know, and provide a label like create task record. API name is going to be CR task record as usual. How many records we wanted to create? Only one. And then how you wanted to create? Either do you have a record variable? No, we don't have. Then we have to select separate resources. Which object we want to create is task. Now here, like, we are going to provide some values. Now what are the fields? What are the values? For that we will take help from our Salesforce. So we will go to sales application or any other application, go to the task tab, and from the drop down click on new task. So you will see that there are multiple fields that pops up. Assigned to, who is the owner for the task, what is the status, what is the subject, and then what is the priority and what is the due date. These are the few fields that we have. Now assigned to, the owner is going to be the running user. Okay. Subject, we will say unable to create the contact record. What is the due date? Due date is going to be 3 days after from today, and priority is going to be normal. And then if you see under the description information heading, we have got something comments. So we are not going to work anything on the comment so far, but if you want, yes, in the comment we will put the error message, whatever the error comes. Okay, that is for our description. Now let's make the changes. We will have subject, description, priority. Description is nothing, this is the comment, this is the API name of our comment object on the task. Field, and then what we have is priority, then we have got due date. Due date is nothing, that is the API name of due date is activity date. And then field, we have another, what is that? That is owner ID, who is going to be the owner. Now the subject we talked about, because this create record is being added in the fault path of our contact. We know that we are trying to create a contact and then this error occurred. So we can say unable to create contact record. Okay. Now description, we talked about we are going to put whatever the error is coming. So we will use flow as a global variable. And under that flow, there is a variable called fault message. This actually holds whatever the error comes up. What is the priority? Let's say as high. Okay. What is the owner ID? Who is the owner? The owner is going to be user. Now we need the logged in user information, right? So we will say user. Again, user is a global variable which gives you the information about the user. So say user dot id, and then we will also have an status field that is missing. Status is going to be not started. Okay, these are the field values that we have to provide. Now we have got activity date, and for activity date that we talked about is it is going to be 3 days from now, from today. So if it is if we talk about today is 23rd of July, it should be 26th of July. Okay, in this value field you have got flow, right? There is flow global variable. It has got current date and current date time variables. So current date actually gives you the date of the current day, and current date time gives you the date along with the time. So what we need is current date plus 3, because we want to add 3 days into the current date. But if you try to use this, it is not going to work here. because this is a formula, this is a calculated field. We are trying to calculate what will be the next date, next 3 days. Okay, so whenever you're trying to calculate something, okay, anywhere, not only for date, in any field, whenever you are trying to calculate something by using a resource, another resource, there could be more than like two or more than two resources, you have to utilize formulas in the flow. So to utilize a formula, just copy whatever you have written here, and then again click anywhere out of your screen, anywhere, don't close this. Okay, hit enter into the value, and then on the top you will see new resource. Click on new resource, and for the resource type select formula. Now the API name, so whenever you are trying to create any formula, the API name should start with FM, that denotes formula, and then you can say today plus 3 days, this is your formula. Now this is the API name basically. Why we are saying today plus 3 days? Because we want to tell any other admin, if they use this flow, they will get to know that okay, this formula is going to store the date 3 days after from now. What is the data type? This is going to be date. And what is the formula? Just paste it whatever you have copied and click on check syntax button before clicking on done, because if you have an error, it is going to give you the error. Then click on done. Now your task object is ready. Click on done, and then click on save button to save your progress. The first step is done. Creation of the task is done. Next step is sending the email. So how we are going to send the email using flow? So to send the email, again click on plus, and this time within the interaction you will say there is something called action. So select action. We will talk more about the other actions, but currently we are more focusing on sending the email. So action, and then search for send email, or you search for email. Once you click on search for send email, you will see there is going to be bunch of input variables pops up. Okay, and label you have got, so let's say send contact error email. Okay, now for set input values for the selected action, under this you will see there are multiple inputs alongside a toggle. There is a toggle with each input. Okay, now if you click on the toggle, by default it says don't include, but what you need to but what all you need to send an email, right? You definitely need something to send an email. So when you're trying to sending an email, what you need is, you need a body. Okay, you need a subject, you need whom you want to send. These are the three bare minimum requirements: the two person, the email subject, and the subject body. The subject body could be of type rich text, or it could be normal text. Okay, in our case we are going to send the normal text. What would be the body? In case in the body we want to send the fault message, the complete error that occurred. So let's, again we are going to use the global variable called flow dot fault message. Okay, then if you see, there is something called email address collection, recipient email address collection, and then there is something called recipient email list. Okay, so like if you want, you could you have a collection that you could utilize here. The collection means you create a variable and you check that checkbox on like allow or hold multiple values, like we did for holding the multiple records. Or you could pass the values comma separated in the recipient address list. So we are going to pass the value here, and if you, as soon as you toggle the checkbox, you will see a help icon over here, and if you hover to the eyeball to that information icon, you will find optional, it says a comma delimited list of recipient email addresses whom you wanted to send. So I'm going to send the email that is contentlearning222 at gmail.com. this is my email. Okay, then if you come down, then we will find something called subject. So in the last there is something called subject, so we are going to include the subject as well, and we will again say that error while creating the contact record. Okay, these are the three bare minimum things that we are going to utilize here. We are not going to do anything else because we will talk about sending the email in a separate scenario. And click on done. So you have done creating a task, you have done sending an email. Now you have to display that error. For that you will use a screen, because this is a pop-up, this not pop-up, this is the outcome where you have to display the information. So let's give the label as contact error screen. Header we are going to hide, and in the footer we are going to hide the pause button, and in the screen we are going to display the error, so we will use display text. As we talked about, anything that we want to display, we will always use display text, and here we will say contact error display. What we want to display, again, what the error that came, so we will say flow dot fault message, and you could just do the formatting like changing the font size, aligning the text center, changing the color to red, because it is an error, so I always prefer to display in the red text. So this happened over here. We have just created, if you see here, right, these are the three things. Now if there is any or error occurs while creating the task, not task, the case record. Okay, if you're creating a case record and some error occurs, what will happen? You have to repeat the same things with different values. The values are definitely going to be different, but the steps are identical. Creating a task record, sending an error email, and then displaying that error, these are the three identical steps. And similarly, the same thing, you might get an error while creating the task record, then you have to again add a fault path, three different identical steps, right? So basically what we here we have seen is, we have seen that there are three steps which are going to be similar every time we are trying to create a record, we are trying to get a record, update a record, or delete a record, right? With the values will different, but the whatever the steps you are trying to do is are same. So what Salesforce has came up with the concept of subflow, where they said, okay, if you have some common steps, you can develop the utility flows and then utilize inside your flow. How? First, let's talk about this error things, right? We will see if the error comes, what happens. Okay. Before that, we have got a couple of questions from Satya. Can we send email to people outside of Salesforce? Yes, if you have email list, you could send that email. The email that I have provided, there is no user with that email. Okay. Then how to add more than one email? Good question. Let me showcase you this one. Go ahead and edit your action. Okay. And then here itself in the recipient address list, you could either put a comma and then provide the email that I'm providing, sfdcpanther@gmail.com. This is my second email. You could have multiple, or you could use the variable, the input that is just top of that recipient address collection. Here you have to provide a resource which contains the multiple emails. Okay. How? Let's say if you want to utilize this, so what you have to do is you need to click on, again, hit enter. If you already have a resource, you could use that resource, and that should not be record single variables, it should be record collection variables. How? And how you could create a collection variable? Click on new resource. Let's say you are trying to store the multiple emails, so we will say where email list, data type is going to be text for storing the email, and then for allow multiple values collection, you have to check this checkbox. this variable will accept multiple values now, and then in this variable itself you have to add the values. So click on done. You could see here now you have got your own variable. So far this variable does not have any email added to it, but this is actually going to take as an input here, and click on done. Now one thing that I would like to add is, like, we can add the fault path to the data elements where we are trying to create a record, we are trying to send in, like, update a record. Similarly, we can add a fault path to the actions as well. So if you click on the action and click add fault path, you would be able to see a fault path for your action as well. So this is, again, while sending that email, you might wanted to perform the three different identical steps, not different, right? So this is that you have, again, you have got this flow and you wanted to perform some certain set of steps. Now as you have got this multiple emails variable, the collection variable, you definitely wanted to add some values, right? Now you could make it more complex, like getting the emails from the custom metadata record before here and adding that into the variable. Or for now I'm going to make it very simple. Click on this plus icon and select assignment, and let's say add emails to the email list. And this left hand side, your variable is going to be where email list. Operator select add, and then provide your email like sfdcpanther@gmail.com. Similarly, you could just add more. You can say, okay, I have a variable email list, say add, and you can say sfdcpanther@outlook.com. So you could add multiple values, and you are already using that variable, right? So this is how you would be able to add more than one email. I hope you got it. Everyone got it, like how you could send the multiple emails, either comma separated or with the help of a collection variable. So we have seen both the ways. Okay. So let's test this now. So to test this, we definitely need to basically see if there is any error, okay, while creating the contact. So while we are trying to create a contact, how we will throw that error? So while we are trying to create a contact, last name is required field. Okay. So if you go to, okay, we have a record variable. Okay. So what we will do is we are going to go to the object called contact, and to throw an error, we will create a validation rule. So go to the contact and then select validation rules and then click on new. Okay. Here what we will do is we are going to say, let's utilize what we will say flow fault message test, and I'm just going to use is new. What it says is new is a formula which says it returns true if there is any new record. Like we're trying to create a new record, it will return true. So I'm going to use is new because it is very easiest way for me to throw an error. An error message I will say cannot create contact record from flow. I'll deactivate it after showcasing you the error and click on save. So I have got a validation rule which is going to error every time I'm trying to create a new contact record. And then this is the error message which will come into the picture. Okay. The validation rule makes sure it is active. Now we have to test our flow. So go to flow, click on debug. As usual, we try to debug the flow. So we don't need to provide any record ID. Click on run. Provide the required fields. I'm just providing the Amit Singh. Anyhow, it's not going to create a record, so I can provide any value. Click on next. You see here, right? We have got some error here that clearly says This error occurred when the flow tries to create a record, and then you've got the validation type which says custom validation, and this is your error that you have got, and this is some of the standard error that Salesforce displays. Before that, what we try to do is we try to create a task record. We try to send an email. So let's see if the task was created or not. Go to the task. Okay. Again, we are going to go to task tab, and under the recently viewed itself, you see that there is a task got created. You could clearly see the date and time. You could clearly see the message as well here under the comments section. That means our task creation was successful, and the email was also sent. I've received that email, unfortunately not able to showcase you here, but the email is sent. Okay. Now imagine that this is the steps. These are the 3 or 4 steps that you have to do for anywhere there is any error in the flow. It could be action element, it could be data element. So if you have to do this every time, this is going to be painful for you. Even this is a time consuming. If you remember, we have took somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes to develop all these flows. Now let's try to do some math here. You have 10 flows, not 10 flows. You have 10 fault path. So 15 into 10, you are taking 150 minutes. That is more than 2 hours, right? Somewhere 2.5 hours. So these subflows are also going to save your time as well. And again, the conditions, you have different things. So this flows, now how you are going to decide what kind of flow you are going to use, auto launch or screen flow for subflow. Okay. So if your subflow has some screens to display to the user, your answer is obvious, you will go with screen flow. If your flow does not have anything, but in future you might want it to display something as a screen, then you have to go with the screen flow, otherwise auto launch flow. So we are not talking about auto launch flow for now, so we will only focus on the screen flow. So as we said, now we are going to create a separate flow that is going to act as a that will act as basically the subflow. So let's quickly click on new flow. Okay, the flow that we have created, that is there in the, let's keep that tab opened because we are going to refer that. Now as we know that we have to display some sort of what we talked about, some screen to the user, so we are going to use a screen flow. So let's select screen flow, create. Now here we have to create some sort of task, right? To create the task record, we need something, some inputs. What are those inputs? Let's get back to the previous screen, and you could see here, these are the inputs that we need: the subject, the error message, the owner ID. Basically, currently in this screen, we need only 2 things: the subject and the error message. Rest all is basically static. So we need 2 variables to get from the parent, so that whatever the parent is sending us as a task, as a subject, as an error, that is getting stored into the task respective fields. So first let's add an element and say create records. Provide the label as create task record. API name is going to be CR task record. Only one record. We don't have record variable. We will use separate resources and literals. For the object, let's select task. Now this is where we are going to provide the values. So subject is again description, then status, priority, owner, and due date. So for owner, we are going to use the same concept, user.id. For priority, we are going to use high. Status, as usual, not started. Now there comes activity date. So in the previous flow, we have used formula. So here also we are going to use formula to get the date for next 3 days. So let's hit enter. click enter on that search box, click on new resource. For resource type formula, API name, again we are going to use FM, and we will say 2 day plus 3 days. What is the data type? Date. Then what is the formula? So in this formula, like you see insert a resource, so click on that, search for flow and select current date. And you want next 3 days, so you would say plus 3. You want next 7 days, plus 7. You want next year, plus 365. Or there are multiple functions as well. So if you say here, there will be something called add months, right? And there are different criteria, like you want logical functions, you want text based functions, you want math based functions, date and time functions. So you will have all those functions here. So you could utilize this, create a formula. Okay, do the check syntax. If everything is valid, click on done. Your activity date is also sorted. Now there are two values that are still pending. One is subject and one is description. Now let's see, while we are creating a contact record, okay, we wanted to set the subject as unable to create a contact record. While we are trying to send an email, we wanted to set the subject is unable to send the email. If you are trying to update a record, we wanted to set the subject as unable to update the record, contact or account or case, right? So what we are going to do here is, so we will take the input from the parent flow, so that parent flow will be sending us the information, and we will using that information, we will be utilizing that information in our child flow, that is our subflow. So what we will do is, we'll hit enter, we will click on that text box, we will create a new resource. This is going to be a type of variable, so we'll say where, and the variable name is task subject. We wanted to store the subject for the task record. Data type is text. Now here comes what you want to do is, you want to take the input from this like in this variable from some other resources, from some other process. Then you will check available for input, so that your parent flow can send some data to this flow, and click on done. Similarly, we are going to create another resource for subject for description as well. So we will say task where task description, data type, and it is also available for input. Click on done, and then click on done for your create record screen, and then save the flow for the process. Okay, now this is your subflow. Okay, so to identify it, what we will do is, we will say subflow colon, and then we are going to put the variable of our flow, like the description, why this flow is being created, what is the purpose of this flow. So the purpose of this flow is to create a task record and send the email if there is any error, right? So we will say create task, send email on error. Your flow is going to be subflow, right? You want to have that subflow in your API name, and do the same. Then click on little toolbar icon to see all the details about your flow. This is the first step that you have. Next step is for sending the emails, right? So let's click on this plus icon. Then we have to utilize the action element, and here in the search box, search for send email, and you have to give the label. So we'll say send email on failure. Okay, so you've got this failure. Again, you need the body, right? What you want to send, the error message. So you have to basically take the input. So click on include and enter on this value where it says enter value or search resources. And then we will create a new resource to take the input for the email body, for the email content. From the drop down, we will select variable. We'll say where email content. Data type is text and it is also available for input. Click on done. Okay. Then who are the recipient? Who is going to receive the email? Now there could be multiple options. You wanted to send using the collection that we have seen, or you wanted to send using comma separated, right? So let's utilize both because we have both options here. So we will basically again create a new resource. So we'll say where email list, okay, email collection, we are going to say here email collection because we wanted to make sure that it is a collection. Data type text, make sure it is available for input, and this time also check this checkbox called allow multiple values, because now we wanted to make sure if the user wants to send the email to multiple emails, that functionality is there. Click on done. Similarly, let's do for recipient address list as well. Create a new resource and we will say email comma separated. Now we are trying to give as much as descriptive for our variable so that everyone can easily understand. Data type again text available for input. This time it is not going to accept the multiple records because it is going to have the value comma separated. Okay, click on done. Now you will have subject. So you will also have to accept the subject from the parent flow. We will create another resource that is going to say where email subject text and make sure it is available for input and click on done. So far everyone is good. Can I see yes or no in the chat? If anyone is having any questions, please feel free to put into chat. And we are also going to basically add the fault path for these two as well. We will not do anything, but we definitely are going to add a fault path so that we have the best practice here. For these kind of scenarios where the subflow itself have a fault path, because this subflow is especially created for handling the fault, handling the errors, right? So if we have the scenario where the subflow itself is giving the error, the flow that is responsible for creating the, like handling the error itself is throwing the error, how we are going to handle, for that we have a separate session like error handling in flow. For now just add the fault path, that's it. There is a question, how to create calendar event to that task. So you have to understand here two things. The event object is there. So if you want to create a calendar event, you can create the event instead of a task. And based on that, your inputs are going to vary. So you will have, like you have a task here, and then you have something called calendar. Calendar, the tab is called calendar, but the object is event. So if you want to create the event, you can create the event object, and that is actually nothing, it is a calendar. I hope I was able to answer your query. Now these are the two steps that you have. The next step that you have is you have to display the error. So you have to click on plus. Now this time you need to display the outcome. So as I said, anytime you need to display the outcome, you have to select screen. So you have to say the label, you could say is error screen, hide the header, hide the pause button, and add a display text here. And we'll say error display screen, not display screen, is display text. Now this time also, if there is any error comes, you cannot use flow.fault message here because this flow is only going to be available in this flow itself. So if you have two different flows like parent and child, so if there is any error occurs in the parent flow, child flow will not have access to it. So if you want to pass and tell the child flow that this is the error, you have to pass as an input, you have to pass. Okay. So we will again click on insert a resource, click on new resource, create a variable and say where and this time we'll say error message and create a data type as text. Okay, available for input, click on done, and as usual I'm going to do some formatting, especially the color part. Okay, and click on done. Your subflow is ready. Now all these three steps that you're trying to perform, your subflow is ready. You're creating a record, you're sending the failure email, you're displaying the error. Okay, now this subflow like will only be available in your parent flow if you have activated that subflow. If you have not activated the subflow, this subflow will not become available in your parent flow. So make sure that after you have created your subflow, you have done the debugging. Okay, you definitely have to do the debugging. So if you click on debug, okay, once you click on debug, it will ask the input from you. You could see here, right? It is asking the input. So you have to provide the valid inputs. Like for example, here I'm saying sfdcpanther@gmail.com. You can set debug email for email content, for email subject, for error as well, for description subject. For everything I'm putting as debug email. If you have noticed one thing, that collection part is not available here because we cannot pass the collection as part of debugging the flow. So we will click on run flow, and we will see that we got the screen which displays the error. And if you go to the task object, you will see that a new task with the subject debug email has been created. That means your subflow is working fine. Now you are ready to use this subflow, so go ahead and activate this. Once you have activated, you have to refresh your parent flow. Once you refresh your parent flow, this time your subflow will become available. So how you are going to use subflow, that is what we are going to see now. So we are not going to use this create task anymore. So let's click on this element and delete. Similarly, we are not going to use this screen. So let's delete. Also the send email as well. We definitely need this assignment because we have to pass some collection variable, okay, to the emails. But before we do that, there are again couple of questions in the screen, in the chat. Can we update multiple email using static resource or .csv file type and use it in our flow or where collection variable? So static resources, so far you cannot read it in your flow. Okay, you cannot read, and then you cannot, like, if you have a static resource, a csv file, you cannot actually read it in your flow. So what you really have to do is, like, you could use a custom metadata and provide all your email there that you can read with the help of get record element, and then utilize in your collection or in your comma separated value. That you can do, and that is the best way to do. Create the custom metadata and do that. Second is, can we have default email to a particular user? Like if we create case, it should go to that particular user. Yes, obviously you can have. And there are definitely companies which are using custom metadata to store the default emails, and then sending that emails using those custom metadata records. Currently what we have used is content learning, like content learning or sfdc panther. You could consider these emails as the dedicated email for certain, like for case creation. You could use some other email for contact creation, you could use some other email for opportunity creation. You could have separate emails and you can send those email to there as well. There is nothing as such restrictions. Okay, now coming back to our flow. Now there is an error while creating the contact record. We have to utilize our subflow here. After you have prepared the email, you need to click on plus, and this time under interaction you have to select the third option, that is subflow. Now while you are on the screen flow, you can only select the flow that is a type of screen, or the flow that is a type of auto launch flow. Even that can also be used, any type of flow. It is a screen flow or it is an auto launch flow. You can use both flows as subflow. So if you click on drop down, you will see there would be some, like not some, multiple screen flows available here, because when you create a Salesforce org, you actually Salesforce gives you multiple flows. But what is our flow? We have given the label as subflow so that we can easily track. That is what we are selecting here. Now we can always use the label which we want. Now you see here, right? What it says, set input values. And these are all the input fields, input variables that we have created in our subflow. So we want to send the email collection. So where all the emails we have stored? We have stored in the where email list. Then we have got where email comma separated. So we have to provide the email over here as well. If you want, again, these are the optional values. Then email content, right? Email content, what we talked about, we are going to send whatever the error occurred. So we'll say flow dot fault message. What is the email subject? This is a static where we are going to say unable to create contact record. Then what is the error message? This is the same. Task description, again it is an error message. And we have got task subject. So we will say unable to create contact record. These are the values that we wanted to pass. Click on done. And you are done. Okay. Now there is some error that comes when you are trying to create the case record. This time we are going to now delete the screen that we have. Now we have only got this fault screen. Now you need to call this subflow, right, with the separate values. So you have to click on plus and then click on subflow. Search for your flow that we have, and we'll say create a task on, we can say create case error. One thing, if you notice for the subflow, if you click on open referenced flow, it is going to open the subflow that you have developed. And again, you have to pass email collection. So if you don't have, let it be like that. Pass the comma separated. This time I'm going to say content learning. Okay. This is my different email. Now you could clearly see, right? I'm passing two different emails, separate one for contact creation and a separate one for case creation. Email content, definitely we are going to use fault message, flow dot fault message. But this time the message, the although the variable remains same, but the message is going to be different. Okay. If, because contact create, there could be a different error while we are creating the contact, there could be a different error while we are creating the case. Then email error message is same and task description is also same. Now email subject, we will say unable to create case record, and same as task subject. Now if you see, we are using the same flow with two different values, and our flow is going to do the trick. Click on done and then save it. Okay. Now what we did is, if you see here, right, this subflow, we saved plenty amount of, at least we saved 15 minutes of each subflow for each the steps, the three steps that you have. Later on, if there comes a new requirement that we are going to see in the next scenario, so if there comes a new requirement, you could easily update your subflow, and that flow will, the other flows, if you are like referencing that flow in 10 or 15 or 50 other flows, those will remain intact. You don't need to modify that. The manageability is really easy, you could clearly see. Now if you see here, let's quickly debug it. Okay. Now we have got record ID, click on run. So you know that we have a validation rule, so it is definitely going to uh, give an error. Okay, I'm just saying Barbara, and I don't know the last name, I'm just putting something else, and click on next. So you could see, right, we got the error message, whatever the error is there. And if you go to Salesforce and click on task tab, you clearly see a new task with the subject unable to create contact record. There is a new task which has been just created, and the previous one is here, clearly you see. So now our subflow is really working fine without any problem. There is no such error, and we are able to clearly see that our subflow is working fine. Now what we will do is we are going to deactivate the validation rule that we have created on the contact record, so that we could test the error for our case record. Okay, so go to contact record, open the validation rule, edit it, and uncheck that checkbox that says active. Okay, now to get that error in your case record, what I have done is, again I have a validation rule on the case object itself. Okay, I will show you. I have already that validation rule. So what this validation rule actually does is it checks if the subject or status or origin or priority description, any of this them are blank. But anyhow I'm going to say, or I'll say is new. Okay, this is very easy. So if I'm trying to create a new record or any of these fields are blank, we will see the error. Later on I will remove this is new keyword, but for now, just to showcase the error, if there is any error occurs, what will happen? Will our flow, the subflow, is going to create a task record and going to display the values like send the email and do the other things or not? So let's again debug the flow now. Okay, click on run, and this time I'm going to say, just providing some random name. Okay, because we know task is going to get create, sorry, contact is going to get created. So we'll click on next. This time we've got the subject, right? So we know that there would be some error. So we are going to have some error here. Click on log a case. So you could see, right, the first thing, the error message is coming up here. That means there is some error, and this is the error that I have actually added in my validation rule. I will show you here. You clearly see it says case subject status origin priority and description cannot be null. Okay, so that is the error part, and let's go to the task and see. Now we have got a different task created, unable to create case record with the different error message. So now we have got the similar steps that are being performed at multiple fault path, and we are able to clearly save the time. Okay, that is basically what your subflow says. Again, what's the benefit? We talked about the maintainability, the manageability, and debugging a flow is that becomes very easy. It saves a lot time. It boosts your productivity, and as we have also talked about, you can break down your multiple, like not multiple, your complex flow into multiple subflows. Now there is like if you have a big flow, right, you don't need to wait for the common functionality. That this is something that I would like to tell you as part of my experience. You really don't need to wait for the common functionality like we have seen here. If you have a big and complex flow, I have actually developed multiple flows that are very big and very complex. Okay, so in that case as well, you can decide which part of your flow can be divided multiple times. So for example, I was working on a scenario where I have to when the, again this is a completely different product called OMS, that is order management. This is a new product launched by Salesforce. So I was working on that, and then there was a scenario where every time an order summary gets created, I need to, not order summary gets created, every time an order gets activated, I need to create an order summary record. I need to create the invoices for that order. I need to create the fulfillment order for multiple locations, and then I also need to make sure the payment, the refund, not the refund, the payment has been captured if there is any mm, remaining payment. So there were multiple things, and first what I did is I developed the whole big flow, and that was like too big. And when I debugged it, it was failing. I wasn't able to figure it out where exactly the error comes, what is the problem and what wrong I have done. Okay, and I wasn't able to figure it out. So that kind of complex flows which has multiple for loops, multiple queries, multiple let's say you have multiple small sub logic, that can also be put into the different subflows as well. There is nothing as such. If you have a common functionality, definitely go with the subflow. But if you have a big, huge or complex flow, also try to break down that into multiple subflows. The benefits, if you think what would be the benefit, again, it would be easy to manage, it would be easy to maintain, and it would be easy to debug. You will definitely save your plenty amount of time. So consider using subflow as part of your savior. So far, how's the things? Are you able to follow me? Do you have any confusion? Anything? Can I see yes or no in the chat? Okay, now let's talk about auto launch flows. So we have talked about subflows. We have seen that subflows can itself act as a parent flow itself. The subflow can be referred from another flow as a child flow. Now, what is the auto launch flow? So as the name indicates, an auto launch flow is a subflow that can be launched from something, some process. The process could be process builder, it could be flow, it could be Apex trigger, Apex class, Visual Force page, LWC. So your auto launch flow will always be dependent on some other parent flow. However, your subflow will be maybe or may not be dependent on the other flow. Okay, so that is something that you have to keep in your mind. An auto launch flow will always run in the background and it will never require a user interaction. Okay, and this type of flow does not support screens and logical actions. So this is again a very important point that we need to keep in mind, that if you are considering using auto launch flow, it will never support the screens. You will not be able to use screens there. So if you have a scenario like previous one we have seen, right? We were looking at that we were able to display the screen as well. So you cannot use that screen in your auto launch flow. Now, what are the scenario? These are the scenario here. Again, some of the scenario, like one scenario I have taken from Salesforce itself. So again, the scenarios will be similar kind of scenarios. There won't be much difference. The only difference that here will be is the screen. So again, you wanted to perform the similar kind of steps based on the certain condition from the multiple flows. You will consider using auto launch flow. You wanted to perform certain actions behind the scene in the background, like whenever a record is created, updated, or deleted, such as sending the emails, posting to the Slack channel, creating a task, or if some error occurs, storing that error into the custom object, custom logger object. You would consider using auto launch flow. And then there is again, if this is a very common scenario, if a user leaves the organization, right? If the user leaves the organization and the user is deactivated, so the user might be owning some opportunities, the user might have some contacts or accounts. You definitely wanted to transfer those records to the certain either public groups or some queues or some other user. And if a user is part of certain groups or queues, you wanted to remove that user from those queues and groups. In that case also you could use auto launch flows. It could be done by a scheduled flow, or it could also be done with the help of auto launch flow. With that, we came up with our scenario number 5. We are again going to take the same scenario that we have seen in the scenario number 3, where we are creating a case and contact record from the same flow. The requirement is going to be kind of similar, but there are few changes here. Now, whenever there is any error comes, right, when the error comes into the picture, there is any error in the fault message, then you have to create the task and assign it to the task owner, definitely. uh, this time what you have to do is you also have to store the log into the custom object, store the error into the custom object, and then you have to send the email to the user as well. So we have removed one part for displaying the error, and we have added one more scenario, one more condition, or one more task process, which says that you have to store the error as well into the custom object called logger. Okay, so this is what we are going to do now. So these are the fields for our custom object called logger. We are going to have a field called title. We are going to have a field called component that is going to store the flow name or the apex class triggers, or your LWC name. Then we will have component type. What is the type of your component that is throwing the error? Currently we're working with flow only, but we will have these 4 different types of components. This is going to be a type of pick list. Then we will have an error message, that is going to be a type of rich text area, going to store the error message. And then user, that is going to be lookup to user to store the ID of the user for which the error is coming. Okay, now let's see the demo. So for this, first what we have to do is we have to set up the custom object, that is logger. So I have already opened the screen for creating a custom object, and I have given the name as system event. The plural label says system events. Object API name is again system event. The related record name is says system event ID. This is a type of auto number that says event ID. Then this is a pattern. And then if you see under deployment status, I make sure that it is deployed. Under the search results, I have make sure it is searchable. Then we are going to create a tab as well as launching the notes and attachments. Click on save. So once we click on save, it is going to give us the wizard for creating the custom tab. So let's select the custom icon, whatever the icon you want. I've selected alarm clock. Click on next, next, and save. So your object is created. Now you have to create the fields. You have to set up the fields. The very first one was title. So it is going to be a type of text. And this title will store like unable to create a record, unable to create contact record, unable to create case record. So we will say length as 255. That is the maximum length for any text field. Make sure it is visible to everyone. Add it to the layout and click on save and new. Then we have to create a text field that is going to store the component name. Again, 255 characters. Click on next. We're not making any field as required, because that's not actually the best practice to make a field as required. After component name, let's create a lookup field for user who is facing the problem. Next, make sure it is visible. Click on next. Add it to paired layout. Okay, we have got user. Next thing that we need is we need the pick list, that is component type. Okay, click on next. We will say component type. We're going to add the values. Let's say flow, apex class, apex trigger, and then LWC. You could add more values like schedulable batch or queuable or future. You could add like manage package, something like that, or platform event. You can add multiple values, and then at the last we are going to have a rich text area rich, a text area rich field that will store error message. Click on next, next, and save it. Okay. The reason we created this object, because this object we will be utilizing in future as well for error handling. So for now we have just done the basic setup of our custom object. Now we're talking about the requirement. We have to create a subflow that does the create a task record, that create the record for system event that sends the email to the user, to the support. Again, the email could be anything. So let's go to the setup, go to flows, and click on new flow. This time from the available flow, you have to select auto launch flow no trigger. Now if you see, if you are able to see this, it says that auto launch flows can be invoked by Apex class, it can be invoked by process, it can be invoked by REST API, as well as it can be invoked by some other flows as well. Okay, click on create button to create the flow. Again, here what we have to do is we have to actually uh, okay, where is the other part? Let's click on add, and you see here, right, the screen part is not here. You don't have the screen part, you have the other parts like creating the records, you have action, you have subflow, but you don't have the screen part. You cannot really utilize that. Okay, now if you see here, right, if you notice, the previous subflow actually have a create a task record and sending the email. The only thing that it doesn't support is it doesn't support, like, our auto launch flow does not support a screen. Otherwise we could have utilized that one. So let's quickly in this flow, what I'm going to do is I will not create the task record, I will not send the email, because we already have done as part of previous steps, so I don't want to replicate those. So what I'll do is I will create the object, the custom object that we have created. So let's search for create record, and we will say label will say log the error in system event object. We want only one record, use separated resources, object is going to be system event. So you have this system event, this one, system event without a space, because if you go to your system event object, go to the details, you will find system event without a space. So that's what we have to use here, system event without a space. Now there would be multiple fields that we are going to utilize here. Now if you go to fields, you will see component name, component type, error message, title, and user. Okay, these are some of the errors that we have got. Component name, component type, again we are going to accept the value for each and every input. We are not going to provide any static value here. So we have to create input variables, we have to create variables that are marked as available for input. So we will say, let's say where component name, data type text, available for input. Similarly, we are going to do for component type. So we'll say where component type, data type is text, available for input. Error message, do repeat the process. Data type is text, available for input. Similarly for title and user as well. So we have just provided the input variables. Click on done. Okay, I don't see a save button here. Seems okay. Now I've got. So let's click on save. And this is the auto launch flow, right? So we'll say auto, and we are going to say log error message on system event object. Click on save. So our flow is saved. If you click on the little toolbar icon, you will see all the variables and everything is available over here. So that we have got, like, we just created the flow. Okay. Now, one thing that you would see here, right? We are even giving the component name, but if you have a flow here, like, let's say your flow, this part of your flow is failing, that says creating a contact record, right? This is failing. So how you will tell the system or tell the user, not the system, how you will tell the user that this particular piece of the flow is failing? You can say, okay, you can give the name of your flow for the component name. You can even give the version name as well. Okay. But how you will tell which particular information, which particular component is failing? Is it create contact record or is it create case record? Okay. For that case, we could also create a new field here. Okay. And then we can create a text field, and we will say flow, and we can say flow step name. Okay. This is a flow step name. Let's make it as 255 characters. Click on next. So what we will do is, in this variable, we will store which particular flow or which particular step is failing for that flow. Okay. Now, as we have created this field after we have created our flow, so we have to refresh this page in order to see the updated value. Click on this little toolbar icon, and then we have to edit our element and then add that new field as well, which is flow step name. And we have to create the variable as well. So we will say where flow step name, and click on, again, it is a data type of text available for input, and click on done. Save it. Okay. So you have got your create record that you wanted to create into the logger. There is a question in the chat that we have got. Does this subflow showing in list of auto launch option so the previous subflow which was a screen? I'll showcase you. Don't worry about that. Okay. I'll show if that is available in the previous subflow, that is a screen flow or not. Okay. So don't worry about that. We'll see. Okay. So this is what we have done, right? Now, if you click on plus icon and select subflow, right? Coming to your question, Anis, if you click on plus icon and select subflow, here you will not see the subflow that is having a screen. It's not going to come here. It's not going to display here. You will not be able to see that. You will only see the flow that does not have any screen, that does not have any interaction. Okay. That is something, that is one part. Will this flow be visible in the screen flow? That we will see in a later point of time. But currently, let's say that if this record is created and you want to give the record ID back to the calling flow or calling process, how you will do that? So let's again click on this element and select edit element. In the bottom, you will find manually assign variable. Okay. So click on that, and then what it says, there is a title which says store system event ID in a variable. So let's create a variable, new resource, where, and we'll say where system event ID, data type is text, and this time we don't want to take the input, we want to send this back as output to the calling process. So we will mark this as available for output so that the calling flow can access this. Click on done, and then again click on done, then save your flow. So this is what we have done as part of our Ligon. Again, if you want, you could just have a like we talked about, right? Create a record. You could say, okay, you want to create a task record. You could definitely do that, and then use separate resources like select task object, take the input and create the record. I will not take time because this is going to be the repetitive work, so I don't want to do that. Don't Make sure you are adding a fault path and you're not forgetting that. Okay, now here I'm going to showcase you one more action. Let's say you have an auto launch flow, and while creating the system event record, due to some unexpected, like maybe a validation rule came into the picture, maybe you created a required field or something, that it failed, right? If it failed, we can do the chatter post to the user saying that this record has been failed. Okay, now let's quickly, in the fault path, let's click on plus icon and select action, and in the action you could have a chatter post to chatter. Search that, provide the label. Now here you see, here it is having two required fields. One is what is the message that you wanted to post. So we already have an error message. Okay, now where you wanted to post, what is the target record? Is it a user? It is a record. So in our case it is a user, and we already have that is where user. So we'll select that. So we are going to do a chatter post under that user. Okay, click on done, and then as we talked about, this action is also going to have a fault path. Okay, so that is what we have. And then if you want, if this post to chatter comes into the picture, it fails somehow, you could again have a another post to chatter, like trying to retry one more time. You can have post to chatter, again do the same, where error message and to the user, and add a fault path, and then don't do anything. If it is failing twice, we really don't need to bother about that. Okay, so this is our small subflow, that auto launch flow that we have created. Now if you want to debug it, you click on debug. It is going to ask you the information, what is the component name. So let's give us the name that we have here. Okay, screen flow. What is the component type? It is flow. Error message, let's say unable to create contact record. Step name, let's say create contact record. Title, same thing, and who is the user. So let's quickly give the ID of our current logged in user. So I'm just using the current logged in user ID here, and click on run. Before you run, you will see that it has got run flow in rollback mode. If you want to roll back the changes, whatever we are doing here, after the flow has ran, you can do that. But I don't want to do that because I want to see if the record has been created or not. Let's click on run. So you will see this green, this bold green line says, okay, how your flow was executed. On the right hand side also you will see how your flow was executed. It will tell how the interview started, then it went to create log record, and then it actually created the record. We got the record ID. Okay, and if you want to see that, you can go back to your sales application, refresh this page, and once you refresh the page, from the more, you will see system events as a tab. Click on that and then select all. You will see the record has been added here with the same pattern of name, and you will see the details coming up here. That means your auto launch flow is working perfectly fine without any error. Come back to your flow, click on edit flow and activate it. Okay, so your flow is activated. Now again, coming back to your question, Anis, that you have asked, we have seen screen flows are not visible in the auto launch flows, but will the auto launch flow be visible on the screen flow? So while we are trying to create a contact record, let's click on plus icon and then add subflow and search for auto here. and you clearly see that your screen flow is not a screen flow, your auto launch flow is visible. Okay. So auto launch flow can be referred from the screen flow as well as from the other processes that we talked about, like having the REST APIs and other values. It is going to do work as it is without any error, but your screen flows will only be visible in the screen flow. That is also known as subflow. Now, if you want to give the name of your component, so let's see what we wanted to give here. So let's first copy the component name here, okay, including the version. I'm going to add a subflow here. Auto launch flow is got here. So we are going to say component name. We have got the same component type, flow. What is the error message? Flow dot fault message. Step name, we will say create. Okay, we'll got create contact record. Title, error while creating the contact record. This is the title now, because we wanted to tell that okay, there was an error while user tried to create a record. Which user? Now we are going to use the global variable and pass the user ID. Now if you see here, it says manually assign the variable. Even if you don't assign, okay, you have to provide the label. Even if you don't assign, you will be able to see the error message, or not error message, the ID of component. How? Let me show you. So now we have got two different flows. One is for displaying the outcome that I really don't want to use now. Okay, I want to delete this. So I have this auto launch flow, and if you click on plus icon and say screen, let's say display the created record ID and display text, created record ID. In the insert resource, you will see here, if you scroll down, you'll find your subflow as well. You find your subflows here. Now what it says, outputs from log error message. The previous one does not shows any output because that flow does not have any output variable, but this flow does have output variable. So it says outputs from whatever the log error message, and this is your variable that you have marked as output, and you could just display over here and click on. Then again, you just need to hide the header and hide the pause button. Click on done, save it. Okay, now to test this, what we have to do is again get back to the contact record, go to validation rule and edit the same. We're going to activate again because we wanted to showcase the error, we wanted to throw the error. So we have just activated the validation rule. Now let's debug this flow, the our parent flow, our main flow that we have. So we are going to provide anything because we know that it is not going to get created. Click on next. You see here the ID of the created record has came here, and you clearly see, if you are able to see my screen on the right hand side, if I scroll here, you see error handled here, right? It says there was an error and that was handled by user. There won't be any email coming up to you saying that unhandled error like happened, something like that. Okay, you see the subflow called, and this is the name of your subflow. Then these are the inputs that you have provided. That subflow has create records. The record was created, and then there was an output, and that output was passed back to us as a record ID that we can see in the UI. Now if we get back to the event system event tab again, we will see there is a new record created with the ID 2, and if you open that, you will see the complete details here. So this is how your auto launch flows work in Salesforce. So you will be working with both subflow as well as your auto launch flow. If you talk about which one you will be working more, that is subflow, because that gives you the flexibility to add the screens as well. But that doesn't mean you will not be working with auto launch flow, because auto launch flows are also as powerful as subflows are. So this is what we had as part of today's session. If you have any questions, please feel free to put into the chat window, or you can also put what did you find this useful, what was your thoughts before we started boot camp. Again, the same request, please do subscribe the channel. If you have not subscribed, press that bell icon for upcoming notifications. Share with your friends and colleagues so that they can also get benefited. So yeah, any questions? If you have any questions, please feel free to put into the chat window. We are here up to 5 minutes, and then we'll close this call. Use cases on auto launch flow, please. So yeah, let me showcase you that screen again. So here are the use cases. You can take a screenshot. You can work on these use cases, and we will definitely we are working on some use cases, and then we'll definitely try to come up few use cases and share with you. When is the next session? Please watch our YouTube channel. We will try to uh, be live again on this time on Thursday and Friday. But we'll see, because Saturday is definitely Saturday and Sunday there are no session. I'll be out of town, but we'll try to put it on Thursday and Friday so that you guys keep learning, and then when we meet next week, you guys has good amount of like learning in your bag. You're able to figure it out, the flows, how you work with, and all those. So this is it from my side. If you have any questions, please put into the comment section. If you have a scenario, please put into the comment. Please do join our Telegram channel, follow us on LinkedIn. All the links are there in the pinned chat. You can get those links there, and we will meet into the next live session for the boot camp. Thank you.